Happy Friday, everyone. This is Emmanuel for History and Coffee with our On This Day series for March 15th. Today we are celebrating the birthday of thought leader and U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who dedicated much of her career to fighting for women's rights. She was born on March 15, 1933 in New York, New York. She also directly broke down barriers for women in the legal profession and in the interpretation of American law long before her time as a Supreme Court Justice. For example, she wrote the brief in the 1971 Supreme Court case Reed v. Reed. This was 22 years before she joined the Supreme Court. In a 1975 interview, she reflected on Reed v. Reed, which she emphasized was, quote, the first case in which the Supreme Court responded to a woman's complaint of sex discrimination under the Constitution, end quote. Ginsburg explained, quote, it was a very simple legal issue. The statute stated that when two persons were related to a decedent in the same degree and both wanted to be appointed administrator of the estate, and one was female and the other male, the male had to be preferred to the female. Almost anyone would recognize that the statute was discriminatory, and you might think it too obvious to yield a major precedent. However, it was tremendously significant in that it represented the first time ever in the history of the country that the Supreme Court had said yes to a woman. The first time the court recognized women as victims of discrimination. Later in her career, when she was a Supreme Court Justice, Ginsburg really focused on bringing about the realization of American constitutional ideals. Most specifically, she prioritized opportunity and equality as fundamental rights for all Americans. Importantly, she also made clear that the original Constitution was deeply flawed. It required thoughtful interpretation over time to ensure the adaptation and preservation of its best principles. For Ginsburg, quote, the equal dignity of individuals is part of the constitutional legacy, shaped and bequeathed to us by the framers in a most vital sense. The founding fathers rebelled against the patriarchal power of kings and the idea that political authority may legitimately rest on birth status. Their culture held them back from fully perceiving or acting upon ideals of human equality in rights, obligations, and opportunities, and of individual freedom to aspire and achieve. But they stated a commitment in the Declaration of Independence to equality and in the Declaration and Bill of Rights to individual liberty. Those commitments had growth potential. End quote. As we approach the 250th anniversary of American independence in 2026, and eventually of the Constitution just over a decade later, it is important to remember the visionaries who worked to ensure the adaptation of constitutional interpretation over time. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's work exemplifies the everyday struggle for a more just United States that has ensured lasting, expanding, and more inclusive fulfillment of constitutional principles. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you will join me again tomorrow for another edition of our On This Day series.